So we are talking about this book, Mastery, by George Leonard. Okay? And I want to just define mastery. He says it's the mysterious process during which what is at first difficult becomes progressively easier and more pleasurable through practice. All significant learning is composed of brief spurts of progress followed by long periods of work where it feels as if you're going nowhere. And George Leonard talks about 5 keys to mastery: instruction, practice, surrender, intentionality, and the edge. Today we are looking at the 4th key, intentionality. I said in the preamble in the WhatsApp group that this key has everything to do with getting the results we want. If there are any shortcuts to success, it is this key. But because we are Singaporeans and trained to work hard and also trained by the many scams in life, we are suspicious of anything that looks like a get rich quick scheme. We're suspicious of anything that doesn't require hard work. We understand when I say that the key of mastery is practice, because practice sounds like hard work. Well, intentionality or results is about working smart and working hard. Now, you look here, I'm wearing a TR90 t-shirt, and that's to remind myself that achieving an ideal body weight and shape involves visualizing the outcome I want and doing the right things. Okay. George Leonard says that what he calls intentionality refers to all words like character, willpower, attitude, imaging, the mental game, the mental game. And this is an essential to take along on the master's journey. At the time when he wrote this book, it was a fairly new thing, but this is what he says. The power of the mental game came to public awareness in the 1970s through the revelations of some of the nation's most notable sports figures. Golfer Jack Nicklaus, for example, let it be known that he never hit a shot without first clearly visualizing the ball's perfect flight and its triumphant destination. Sitting up there high and white and pretty on the green. That's what he visualizes. A successful shot, Nicklaus told us, was 50% visualization, 40% setup, and only 10% swing. George Leonard shares a lot of examples of visualization in sports. We know that success in sport depends on practice, and practice is just a physical thing. But what is the impact of the mental aspect? Now, you know, George Leonard was an Aikido master, and he says, sometimes I have my students hold a vision or the feeling of a certain throw in their mind, and then practice it over and over for an hour or more until they are drenched with sweat and wiped clean of their previous thoughts or feelings about the throw. This use of intentionality often produces favorable results in the palpable three-dimensional world of the martial arts. So those of us who are doing SUP, I think if you go through the videos and visualize some of the strokes and your movements, that may help you spend useful time in the sea. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches about how critical our thoughts are, because thoughts lead to choices, and choices lead to behaviors or actions. Behaviors create experiences. Experiences will then produce emotions or feelings, and these emotions will then go back and drive our thoughts. Okay, so everything starts with the mind. Alan Nagao, who was a student of Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, says thoughts are things. Okay, thoughts are things. What you have is because it started with your thoughts. In our early series of Motivational Money, we studied the self-confidence formula. And I just want to recall 2 parts of it. Second, I realized the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. Third, I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. Okay, this is the shortcut, but absolutely critical. Brian Clemmer, a great leadership coach and author of The Compassionate Samurai, wrote a book titled If How-Tos Were Enough, We Would All Be Skinny, Rich, and Happy. Okay, the title is If How-Tos Were Enough, We Would All Be Skinny, Rich, and Happy. And you know, when you talk to someone about, you know, a business, or they always want to know how to. Well, he, in the introduction to the book, he actually welcomes us to the journey of personal growth called personal mastery. So growth and mastery, they are one and the same thing. Growth and mastery are the same. Brian Clemmer says that intention plus mechanism equals to result. Okay? Intention plus mechanism equals to result. In fact, he simply says intention equals to result. So I know your intention when I look at your results. It's very, very simple. Okay? And he says because intention equals to result, when the intention is clear, a mechanism will appear. Okay? And the mechanism can be in the form of act grace. Okay? Something will happen, or a thought, the idea about what action you need to take. Okay? This is in line with the success mantra: intention plus action plus grace equals to success. Okay? Now, having a clear and compelling why is part of the intention. Okay? That is why the first characteristic, the first crucial characteristic of a leader of success is compelling desire. When you have a clear why, it gives you a reason to carry on and persist. Earlier, I gave you a summary statement of mastery, which is the reality of never-ending practice and the realization that all significant learning is composed of brief spurts of progress followed by long periods of work where it feels as if you're going nowhere. Like how, I feel sometimes with my stand-up paddling. And it would be very difficult to persist like this, these long periods where you feel you're going nowhere, unless you have clear intentionality. So, how do we make our intention clear? Visualization is how we make our intention clear. What happens when we practice powerful visualization? The author James Allen wrote in a classic in 1903, "As a Man Thinketh." Okay, and this is what a piece of what he wrote. I want to read it to you. He says, "Your mind is like a garden." The author creates an analogy of our mind with the garden. We either choose to cultivate our mind wisely or let it run wild. If we don't plant the seeds of beautiful flowers in our garden, the garden will itself produce some useless weeds. Just as the gardener weeds out all unnecessary plants, it is the responsibility of every individual to plant the right seeds, nurture them, at the same time put out all the weeds. When we do this, our life becomes beautiful. But if we do the exact opposite and feed the weeds, our life becomes a mess. So we need to be clear in our minds what kind of a garden we want. Okay. Now, Napoleon Hill, from whom we got the self-confidence formula, said, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And the wisest man in the world, King Solomon, says in Proverbs, chapter 23, verse 7, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." George Leonard shares in his book Mastery what Arnold Schwarzenegger said. "All I know is that the first step is to create the vision, because when you see the vision there, the beautiful vision, that creates the want power. For example, my wanting to be Mr. Universe came about because I saw myself so clearly being up there on the stage winning. So in TR90 it's important, to have the image of what you want to look like in your slim, like in your 20s. There are various exercises to create your vision, like creating vision boards. And perhaps one day one of us can arrange a workshop for us on doing vision boards. So let me wrap this up. Let me wrap today up. The word intentionality suggests that the starting point is in the mind. It's a thought, okay? Intention. So how do you make a connection between the start and the finish, which is the ultimate result? The finish is the ultimate result, the actual reality. How do you connect between start and finish? How do you make wishful thinking into actual reality, or even more than you ask or think? That's where visualization and practice come in. We've talked about practice today. We talk about visualization, which is part of intentionality. The clearer your destination, your image, what's in your mind, the more appropriate the action or the practice will be. Okay? So don't just say, I want to be a Ruby. Just write it down in your definite purpose statement. No, visualize the lifestyle of a Ruby. Imagine the families you are helping. Visualize the deep friendships, the powerful and fun teamwork when doing the business, the places you travel together, their downlines becoming rubies and team elites bigger than you can imagine. Imagine that big Chinese New Year open house at your place. Okay. Clear visualization. You can be a ruby this year. Team elite, like some of us want to be team elites. So in conclusion, I want to say that intentionality fuels the master's journey. Every master is a master of vision. Next week, we will look at the fifth and last key to mastery, called the edge. Okay, the edge.